All right, James Sykes, CEO, President, and Director of Baselode Energy, here with the ever incredible Cameron Mackay, VP Exploration with Baselode, and we are here to discuss the recent news release that we have put out last week on drill holes AK2212 to AK2219, and just to provide some more context regarding those forward-looking statements. So just a couple things that we're going to be talking about is the logistics of a winter drill program, especially when you have helicopter support. It's not as easy as many people might think it is, but we're going to discuss the two mineralized horizons, the upper and lower zone, just kind of expand on all of that, especially with some of the results that we have seen from this last news release and some of the results that we saw previously, but then putting it all together in the end of what this means for any potential that exists at ACKIO. So Cameron, you're the guy who's done all the organization, and you've done a wonderful job of getting everything going, the camp, the drills, just you've been very busy all year, and it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. So can you kind of give a laydown on why we drill the way that we do?
Yeah, sure. So I guess first, logistically in the wintertime, it's challenging with a heli program, because we have to build our pads in advance. With the skid program, you have a little more flexibility. You can drag the drill wherever you want to go, but we have to plan ahead and build these pads, shovel out all the snow, and get them constructed and waiting for the drill. And so once we build a pad, we're kind of locked into that. And in order to maximize the meterage and get a good understanding of what's going on in the subsurface, we've been drilling these fans off of our drill pad so that we can intersect mineralization at multiple points using different angles off one drill pad. And so that's why there's multiple holes off of each pad. It's just to maximize the use of every single pad that we have.
Right, so not very efficient or economic to sit there and pop in 90s every 10 to 50 meters.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. All right. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of the upper and lower zones then? So the upper zone there in the lighter pink, and then the lower zone in the red.
Yeah, so the upper zone was first found with our discovery hole in 2021 in the fall, AK2101. And it sits essentially at the contact between metasedimentary rocks and a rigid granite body. And this one looks more like sort of classic basement hosted deposits that you find in the Athabasca Basin and surrounding area. It ranges from about 90 to 125 meters below surface. It's about 45 meters wide, pinches and swells a bit. And so far we've outlined over 200 meters of strike length. It's open in all directions. And we do have confirmed high-grade uranium within this zone. And then, yeah, the lower zone, it was first detected in hole AK2103. And at the time, we kind of wrote it off because it didn't look like like classic basement mineralization. We thought it might actually have been something older because it didn't look like what we're used to seeing with these basement systems. And it was hosted within this rock type that we're calling a calc-silicate. We could do a whole webinar on this calc-silicate thing, but just suffice it to say that that's what we're calling it for now. And it looks brittle, but you don't see the good, strong alteration that you'd necessarily that we typically associate with these basement-hosted deposits, which is why we didn't really think much of it at the time. But it's become more and more important, and our understanding of it is really going to guide our exploration moving forward. And so it's basically 150 to 200 meters below surface. Looks like it's getting closer to surface as we move to the south. And it does have some very high levels of radioactivity. That's where we had recently in hole 11, greater than 25,000 counts with our handheld scintillometer in that lower zone.
Yeah, it is a very curious rock for sure. Not seeing all that alteration, it's like it's fresh rock, absolutely competent, and all of a sudden you just get these massive kicks. Very cool. All right, so you're going to take us through a cross section of the upper zone. So A on the cross section will be to the northwest, and A prime will be down to the southeast. This is what the upper zone looks like. It's just going to zoom in a little bit here to provide a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so this is basically facing to the southwest, and what we're looking at here is radiometrics from our downhole gamma probe. And hole 18 is a bit of an anomaly because we have, radioactivity penetrating much deeper within that drill hole, but we tend to see this upper zone confined within a sort of sub-horizontal band that's moving up in elevation as we move to the south. So that's A prime there. And so, yeah, it's coming towards the surface as we move south onto our property.
Yeah, for references to hole 21 right here, which had 642 CPS over 16.2 meters, that returned 0.13% over 15.5 meters. Hole 3, this upper zone, 994 CPS over 5.55 meters, which equated to 0.24 over 5.5 meters. So what can you expect out of hole 18, which had a number of intersections, especially a really nice zone of 2130 CPS over 2.6 meters at 164 meters depth. So you can see that big peak down there. How would you compare hole 18 to holes 1 and 3?
I mean, it compares very favorably. I don't want to make any predictions about what the chemical assays are going to return. I have an idea in my head, but I don't want to be held to it. But I think we're going to see some nice numbers come out of hole 18 for sure. You can see the radiometric peaks there, and knowing the results that we got off of 1 and 3, we can expect some good results.
Yep, I would agree with that 100%. More radioactivity, the better. All right, let's quickly jump down to the lower zone. So same thing, B to the northwest and B prime to the southeast. Looking at the section as it is, and then we'll zoom on in, and we have something similar.
Yeah, similar story, right? Moving up towards surface as we move to the south again. And yeah, this is the one that's hosted in our calc-silicate. Yeah, like big, strong radiometric peaks, visible uranium mineralization in these holes. But it's strange when you look at it in drill core, because like we were saying earlier, it's essentially fresh rock that's just been fractured, and you get these little blebs of uranium mineralization within these hematized fracture networks, but you don't see the strong alteration. So it's kind of curious, but we're very much encouraged by it, and we like the fact that it's obviously trending up towards surface as we move further into the meat of our property.
Yeah, especially looking at, well, we'll get to hole 15 down the road, but hole 15 looks like its own little anomaly there, but we'll touch on that for sure. So we have hole 3 here, which in this part of the drill hole, 876 CPS over 3.75, and that returned 0.11 over 2 meters. And this is where you said this was the initial discovery of this lower zone in the calc-silicates, and then we basically thought nothing of it just because it looked like it was really old. There was no alteration, no real structure to it. Lo and behold, when you look towards holes 11 and hole 19, obviously the radiometrics really peak. Hole 11 had those 2 whopper zones, 1583 CPS over 6.5 meters at 201 meters, and then 1230 CPS over 11.9 meters at 215.75 meters. Hole 19 not looking too bad either. 1037 CPS over 2.05 at 219.95 meters, which does also include 8,000 CPS, a little kicker in there. And then 1160 CPS over 4.55 meters at 236.8 meters depth, which also includes a nice little kicker of 9,200 CPS. So it looks like the mineralization does get stronger as we progress towards the southeast, which is very encouraging, especially if it's getting shallower.
Yeah, very much.
So looking at both of the sections side by side. Now, can you kind of give some sort of spatial reference to these about which way that, we've talked about this internally, the possibility of these 2 zones actually being connected. Can you elaborate on that more? And if they are connected, why aren't we seeing that just yet?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that these are actually connected, and so the lower zone is basically sloping up to the west, and then connecting with that upper zone. And so the reason why we didn't have this interpretation, we'll look at the section in a minute here, I think. But all of our geology is basically dipping to the west, and so it seemed very odd that if this was a connected mineralized system from the lower zone to the upper zone, it would be completely cross-cutting our geology, which if you're going to have a break, you tend to have a fault break that occurs, along the existing structure. And so this would be completely cross-cutting that. So we're very hesitant to make that interpretation initially. But as we progress with the drilling and our understanding of the area, is looking more and more like that might be the case, that these are actually two connected zones. And it's a relatively flat-lying body. If that's correct, it'd be sloping basically 30 degrees towards the west, which would put unconformity potential to the west of our current drilling.
East.
Yes, sorry, my mistake, east.
Yep, which is what we have here. So if people didn't get what Cameron is saying, that if we connect the lower zone to the upper zone, everything is dipping down to the west, but the unconformity potential does exist towards the east. So we've got a nice little target up in there, and hopefully we will be chasing that up shortly. Just so a little bit more context then as to what you were talking about, some reasons behind why we think there is unconformity potential.
Yeah, like, I mean, you can see where the circle is there. We have this sandstone wedge, which again, like you see the way that our granitic body there is dipping, and our sediments and everything, it's all dipping towards the east. So in order to have that structure form where you see that sandstone wedge, it has to cross cut everything. But you can see even like with our upper zone there, it's basically at the exact same elevation as we have that sandstone wedge. And so that's another good indication that that this section needs to be redrawn, and potentially we have a connection between the lower zone and the upper zone, not necessarily in the plane that we're looking at, but we'd have to cut a section at a different orientation for it to make sense. But things are pointing to there might be some unconformity potential to our east.
Yeah, and as that section shows, we've got basement thrusted over sandstone, and there's no way for that to happen without faulting. Very encouraging. And then especially in that drill hole where we did intersect that wedge, when you look at the radiometric profile again, between the two big thick black lines at the bottom of that, you can see the radiometric peak in the basement rocks just being thrust over the sandstone rocks. And typically the more radioactivity is responding to uranium. So if there is potential for uranium within, we're not talking about mass amounts here, we are talking about pathfinder uranium, which the more radioactivity, the more uranium within these type of structures does give a lot of potential for unconformity style of mineralization. This is a work in progress, but it changes a lot of things. So when you look at this figure, all of the ones with deep roots, those are your basement hosted deposits from left to right: Uranium City, Cluff Lake, Triple R, Eagle Point, Arrow, Rough Rider, MacArthur, Griffin, Millennium, Shea, Centennial. They've all got these deep root systems to them. And all the ones that are unconformity are more flat like Pancake, Subi, Suay, Key Lake, and so forth, Hurricane Phoenix. Based on having the upper and lower zone that we have right now, ACKIO has the morphology of an unconformity deposit. It's just in the basement rocks. So that does give a little bit more, I guess, credence or validity to the potential for unconformity mineralization. However, if this does change and we do have more of a, I guess, root system to it, then again, that's still not a bad thing as well, because a Rough Rider being over a 70 million pound mineralized system in itself, that wouldn't be something too bad to have. And then you can kind of see the depths that we're in here. We are in those open pit style of depths. So hopefully ACKIO really pans out. And this is what you were talking about then. So with the fabric dipping towards the east, as indicated by those blue lines, and then we've got this structure cross-cutting it completely, and something along those lines, which, to be honest, in any deposit I've worked on, I've not seen that happen. To control mineralization, they've always been following, in this example, they would follow the blue lines. They would not have followed the yellow lines. So
yeah, exactly, which is why we're so hesitant. And then, yeah, we found this from Cluff Lake, and yeah, this kind of, I don't know, it it gave us a precedent to at least entertain the idea that what we're seeing might be more analogous to this, where you have these structures cross-cutting the regional fabric, and those cross structures controlling the mineralization. So we're leaning towards a model that looks like this, and we'll be actively testing it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this is from Arriva, who are now Orano, previously Kojima before Arriva. It was a 24 million pound deposit, basement hosted deposit, the biggest one out of the Clough Lake camp. So if this is the first analogy I've really seen of things cross-cutting the regional fabric and hosting the mineralization within them. Other prospects. So what about going down to the southeast then? You did show all of those sections, with the black lines. They're all dipping towards the south, or trending up towards the southeast, which is where we've got potential for unconformity. So, aside from unconformity potential, what else do we have going on towards the southeast? Looking good?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can see those mineralized shells there. They seem to be curving there, but I mean, these things often pinch and swell. So I mean, we definitely don't think we've seen the tail end of this moving to the south. I'm very encouraged by the alteration that we've seen even in 13 and 14, where the mineralization wasn't as good. But I will not be surprised to find out that it comes back as we move further to the south.
Yeah, we'll touch on some of these. So as you're talking about here, so when we drilled holes 15, 16, 17, I'll also point out the collar for this hole is further to the west than all of the other holes that have had what I would consider to be juicier results. But we don't have a lower zone, and it looks like our up zone is pinching out. Hole 15 returned 615 CPS over 7.9 meters at 178.3. So does this mean mineralization is ending, or is there another plausible cause?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's ending. I mean, the reason that we moved that hole further to the west is based on some magnetic features that we were following, as well as linking up with the intersections that 92 Energy has had on their property to the north as well. So that's following that same trend. That doesn't mean that necessarily if we step back off of that, we wouldn't see something more interesting.
I'll also point out the hole 15 was the kind of anomalous and straggler in both of the longitudinal sections that we were showing for the upper and lower zones, that it didn't seem to fit in. We'll get into why that is. Holes 13 and 14, good results out of those as well. Hole 13, 712 CPS over 8.1 meters, which did include 13, 17 CPS over 2.35. So that's a pretty good intersection in itself. Hole 14, 1152 CPS over 2.9 meters, and all of those above 166 meter depth. So good intersections, but again, we don't seem to be seeing the upper zone in this one, but we're seeing the lower zone continuing here. So yeah, can you kind of explain on this one?
Well, I mean, that one, again, was following a magnetic feature. So right now, we currently have that upper zone curving off and pinching out there, but I think that there's a good chance that we might have overshot that upper zone. So I think if we step back off of that drill pad to the east, we might pick up that upper zone again. So yeah.
Well, like you said, the structure and alteration look very encouraging in these holes.
Yeah, very much so. I do think we might have just overshot it. And so we'll have to test that.
Awesome. So another good potential for why those holes seem to be slightly off and everything is obviously cross structures. And we know this is a geologically complex area. I love the Eagle Point schematic there on the right-hand side. And you can take that and basically throw it into a fractal sense. You can look at that type of system on a regional scale, on a deposit scale, on a mine scale, even down to the micro scale when you get into looking at thin sections and things like that. Fractals, for me, fractals have always been a great way to understand geology and complex systems. So going back to Clough Lake, we can take this fractal idea and throw it in here. Again, this is the part of the 24 million pound deposit. Nothing there looks pretty easy to follow. Like you can follow the major trend, but within the major trend, you've got a lot of different structural orientations that just they seem to change almost every few meters or so. So nothing really stays the same. So if you do try to follow one trend and expect it to be similar across the board, the reality of the situation is that it could be geologically complex. So when a hole's 13, 14, 15, 15, 16, 17, all to the north and to the southeast, we could be seeing something like this, where we've been hitting certain zones within these red lines, but then there's a change in the structure, or you get a structural offset, and then everything changes along there.
Yeah, and I think that image on the left-hand side of the screen is potentially a good analogy, where we have, you know, this northwest southeast trending main trend, but then you have these cross structures where you're going to get some sweet spots. And so we're defining that trend, and then we got to find those sweet spots and then chase them to the northeast. So that's kind of what we have in our heads right now. And yeah, there's just a lot more to do. I mean, we're still very, very early in this thing, and you know, the trend just seems to keep going. And like I said, we got to find those sweet spots and follow them up to the northeast.
And just another way of looking at how mineralization you can get mineralization with different orientations. And these two zones are within 50 to 100 meters of each other. We are drilling on a 50-meter collar spacing. So we're basically drilling on the same type of system as this is. Who knows? We could see ACKIO could be that part in the upper left-hand corner that we're drilling right now. And then, you know, we might even hit a dead zone where you have no mineralization. And all of a sudden you can hit this massive zone of veining. So there's a lot of potential here.
Yeah, most definitely. And like we've said this before in previous videos and stuff too, like whenever you see something pinching, doesn't mean it's not coming back. Yeah.
Yep. Complexity can't be easy, hey?
No, definitely not.
All right, so I guess our plans, and hopefully what we'll see in future news releases, we will keep drilling to the southeast. We should be wrapping up drilling to the northwest and just finishing that off and adding that to the whole story and providing a good working model. And then, yeah, we've shown great potential for unconformity mineralization to the northeast and to the southeast. So we do have a lot to go. We're what, a quarter of the way done 20,000 meters of diamond drilling. So we've got a long year ahead of us. We're seeing great results as we continue to go. And yeah, so thanks, Cameron, for running us through all of this, and thank everybody else for watching.
Thank you.
Again, always check us out on the YouTube channel. We do have some great videos on there. If this is your first video, yeah, go back and check out some of the Baselode videos. We try to be as educational as possible and very upfront, but also check out some of our other sister companies. And if you need to contact us, info@baselode.com. My email is jsykes@orgroup.ca, and we can also follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We would love your support. Thank you very much.